Hi there, Christine Kenyon here, and welcome. Today I'm going to be answering the most commonly asked questions about how to shoot the Milky Way. I think my answers are going to give you the confidence to get out there to shoot under the starry night skies. So let's get into it. What kind of camera do I need? Okay, my answer to that would be this. If you've purchased a DSLR or mirrorless camera in the last 5 years, I think you're probably good to go. Next question. What sort of lenses work? Wide or ultra-wide lenses, and on a full-frame camera, that would be a 14 to 35 millimeter. I typically shoot 14 to 24, and for a crop sensor camera, just look for the equivalent. And as far as your aperture is concerned, look for an aperture of f2.8 or wider. And we know the scene is dark, so we need a lot of light to get into that sensor, so we want to have as wide an aperture as possible. What other types of equipment do I need? Well, the next thing I would recommend is a tripod. You want to have a sturdy tripod so that your camera doesn't shake. And then while we're talking about camera shake, make sure that you have a way to release your shutter or take your picture. And you don't want to be doing this because you will shake your camera. So the easiest way is to use your camera's internal self-timer. You can set that to 2 or 5 seconds, or better yet maybe, buy a third-party intervalometer. They're not expensive. It's a big word essentially for a shutter release, although it can do more than that, and we will talk about that down the line. But for now, you can simply use that to trip the shutter, except you're pressing a button and you're not shaking your camera. Is there anything else I need to bring? Glad you asked. Yes, I would highly recommend a headlamp, bug spray, and in fact, I recommend this. And not necessarily this brand. Picaridin, I'll link it below, is amazing because frankly when you have your headlamp on, I didn't need to do that, but anyway, when you have your headlamp on, it can attract a swarm. I don't know if you guys ever watched Peanuts, and there was Pigpen, and he was always drawn by Charles Schulz with like all the stuff around his head. Well, I literally looked like that one night when I turned my headlamp on in the Southwest, and that's probably too much information. But the picaridin won't damage your equipment. It's actually better than DEET in like every way possible, and it actually works against every kind of bug imaginable, so I highly recommend that. Consider that a pro tip. Another thing is extra batteries. Bring extra batteries for your headlamp, for any flashlight you bring, for your little LED lights that you might use to light up your foreground, and definitely bring extra batteries for your camera. I have been in situations before, I don't want to share it with you, but it just didn't end well. So definitely bring lots of batteries. What are the settings for my camera? I'm going to give you basic camera settings. Start with this and you can tweak it. First of all, shoot in RAW. If you've never shot in RAW before, it's okay, it isn't scary, and trust me, in post-processing you'll be very happy you did because you'll actually be able to do something with the image. If you shoot JPEG, it's just not gonna work out well. Next, set your camera to the widest aperture so that you let the most light into the sensor. Set your ISO to 5000, and remember that's just a starting point. And as far as your shutter speed goes, we're going to use the rule of 500. And why do we need to do that? Because the Earth is spinning, in case you didn't know that. Because the Earth spins, if you shoot with the wrong shutter speed, you're going to get stars that look like dashes rather than dots. So this equation actually will give you the roundest stars possible. So let's give you an example here. So we're going to take 500, we're going to divide it by our focal length. So let's just say we're shooting at 20 millimeters. And that equals 25 seconds. So just plug 25 seconds in and we are good to go. So in the end, all we're ever going to change is our ISO in order to achieve a proper exposure. How do I know if I have a proper exposure? Here is where the histogram really helps you out. If you don't know what the histogram is, I suggest you look it up. No, and the histogram is a graph that you'll see on the back of your camera. That is if your camera is set up that way. And let me just add right now, be familiar with the camera settings. Honestly, that really helps you. Read your manual, because what I recommend that you have is that when you shoot an image and you go to look at it, that you have the histogram popping up every time you play back an image, and that way you can actually see where your exposure is falling. So a histogram looks like this. This is also a decent exposure for the Milky Way. Now some may say this is too dark, but this is how I shoot. I get good results. I'm happy with this. You can shoot more to the right, but definitely don't shoot more to the left. You do not want your blacks jamming up against the left-hand side. So just make sure your graph is ending past the center point and you should be good. Another feature that you may want to engage is long exposure noise reduction. It's actually really helpful to clean up your image before you take it into post. And if you've never used it before, here's just a little tip. Don't worry, your camera is not broken if it suddenly goes dark and it doesn't do anything and you're wondering, my gosh, why isn't my camera working? Because when you take an image, let's just say the exposure is 20 seconds, your long exposure noise reduction is going to run for an additional 20 seconds while it's doing its thing. And then a question that everybody wants to know is, how do you focus in the dark? And that can be tricky, but I think I'm going to give you a couple of tips that are going to help you out. First of all, turn autofocus off because we're going to be manually focusing. Turn your LCD or live view on. Aim your camera at the brightest star in the sky and then zoom in on that star and then manually focus until it's nice and crispy sharp, and then recompose your image and you're good to go. So with the Milky Way in focus and your camera set up and ready to go, fire off a test shot and take a look. Be sure to look at the histogram and also zoom in on your live view to make sure that the stars are in fact sharp. If your exposure isn't exactly right, and it probably won't be, the ISO should be the only variable going either up or down to lock in a proper exposure. So how do I plan a Milky Way shoot? Well, I would say pre-planning is one of the most important things for night photography. So right now, let's go over some of the apps that I use to help me plan my shoot. I use Google Earth, lightpollutionmap.info, terrific site for knowing where your dark places are. I use PhotoPills, which I highly recommend. And then I also use weather apps. I use WeatherBug, Weather Underground, and Clear Skies. So let's take a look at what PhotoPills can do for you. This afternoon, I took my phone, opened up the PhotoPills app, and aimed it in the southwest sky. Now, I haven't gone into that with you, but the Milky Way is visible in North America, mainly between March and October, with peak in June and July. You're going to see it in the southeast in the spring and the southwest in the fall. I've got the app right here. Let's go over it together. So we're going to click on Planner, and then we're going to click on Night AR at the bottom. And then you'll see that I'm aiming this again in the southwest sky, and I'm scrubbing my finger along the bottom of the screen. And as you can see, the Milky Way is moving throughout the scene, and you will see the time of day. And so this way you can plan when your galactic core is going to be in the perfect position for a wonderful composition. And it's pretty cool. I love it. I use it all the time. I highly recommend it. Get it loaded up. And if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and maybe even turn on that, that ring a bell thing, because then you'll know when I post the next video, which is going to be about nightscape composition, low-level lighting, blends, composites. I've linked my Instagram account below in case you want to see more of my night photography, and I really appreciate you stopping by, and I'll see you on the next video.